For 19 years, I've missed my father every single day. He died in 2005, and I pretty much built my entire life around his memory. I was his Claire, his star. He was the anchor of my world, the man who taught me how to read a compass, how to stand up for myself, and how to find constellations in a smoggy city sky. When he died from a sudden heart attack, my world didn't just crumble, it vanished. For 19 years, I grieved the man I knew, my childhood hero. But an email that landed in my inbox an hour ago might have just dug up his grave. It was from my old high school English teacher, Mrs. Gable, someone I hadn't heard from in over a decade. The subject line had just 3 words: check this now. And the link inside didn't just unravel a family secret, it ignited a war. My name is Claire Bennett, and this is the story of how I found out my life was a lie, and how I burned it all to the ground. Before we get into the secret that changed everything, the one that reshaped my past and redrew the battle lines in my own family, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It's a strange comfort, knowing I'm not completely alone in the dark. Now, where were we? Yes, the beginning of the end. To really get the depth of the betrayal, you have to understand how much I loved him. My father, Daniel Bennett, wasn't just a parent. He was my entire world. My mother, Eleanor, has always been more reserved, more concerned with appearances and the quiet, orderly march of life. My older sister, Olivia, was her shadow, a perfect copy of our mother's pragmatism. They were a matched set of fine china, beautiful and distant. But my dad and I, we were the cracked, well-loved mugs, overflowing with adventure and stories. He was a civil engineer, but to me, he was a magician who built bridges that touched the sky. He'd take me to his construction sites on weekends, the air thick with the smell of sawdust and wet concrete. He'd hand me my own little yellow hard hat and explain tension and compression, telling me, "Claire, a strong structure needs a solid foundation. Just like a person." He was my foundation. He was the one who sat with me for hours when I was failing algebra, not just feeding me answers, but drawing diagrams until it finally clicked. He was the one who cheered on my painting, even when my canvases were a total mess of color, telling me that art didn't need to be perfect, it just needed to be honest. His death at 48 was a cataclysm. A heart attack, the doctor said. Sudden, massive, non-negotiable. I was 18, just weeks away from graduating high school. I remember the phone call. I was at the library, pretending to study for finals, but really just daydreaming about an art scholarship I was hoping to land. My mother's voice on the phone was so thin, a thread of sound I'd never heard before. "There's been an accident. Your father." The funeral was a blur of black suits, pitying whispers, and the suffocating smell of lilies. Olivia was stoic, a rock for our mother, who looked like she'd been hollowed out overnight. I, on the other hand, just shattered. I couldn't cry. I couldn't speak. I just felt gone. My dad, my foundation, was gone. The whole structure of my life had collapsed. In the years that followed, my grief became my personality. I let the art scholarship go. How could I create anything when the one person who believed in my chaotic honesty was gone? I stayed home, went to community college, and got a practical degree in business administration. I became the responsible daughter, the one who handled the estate, what little there was, and made sure my mom was okay. You see, my father had been terrible with money. At least, that was the story. My mother and Olivia talked about it in hushed, disappointed tones. He was a dreamer, a man of big ideas but poor follow-through when it came to finances. When he died, we found out there was almost nothing left. A small life insurance policy that barely covered the mortgage, and a mountain of what my mother called project debt. We had to sell our family home, the one he designed himself, and move into a small townhouse. The story of our family became one of tragic, noble struggle. The brilliant man, taken too soon, leaving his grieving family to pick up the pieces. I bought into it completely. I lionized him, his financial screw-ups becoming just another part of his romantic, artistic soul. He was too good for the grubby world of money. I held on to his memory like a sacred object. Every single year on his birthday, I drive to the coast where he first taught me to skip stones and read his favorite poems out loud to the waves. I kept his old workshop in my garage, filled with his tools, his blueprints, the faint smell of him that still lingered. It was my sanctuary, My mother and Olivia thought it was morbid. "Claire, it's been 19 years," Olivia would say, her voice laced with that familiar, gentle condescension. "You have to move on. Dad wouldn't want you living in the past." My mother would just nod, her face a mask of tired sadness. They had moved on. Olivia married a wealthy banker, had 2 perfect kids, and lived in a sprawling suburban mansion. My mom spent her days gardening and going to her book club. They had sealed the door to the past. I was the one still standing in front of it, waiting for a ghost. My life was quiet. I worked as an office manager. I had friends, I dated here and there. But there was always a pane of glass between me and the world, a barrier made of a grief I wouldn't let go of. My father was my defining relationship, and his absence was the defining feature of my adulthood. I was the daughter of a dead man, forever stuck in the amber of 2005. And then came the email. I was at my desk, sipping my lukewarm afternoon coffee, when the notification popped up. Gable Marie. My heart did a weird little jump. Mrs. Gable was my senior year English teacher, a kind, sharp woman who saw right through my grief fog after Dad died. She'd written a beautiful note in my yearbook, something about how great loss carves out space for great strength. I clicked it open. The email was short. Subject: check this now. Dear Claire, I hope you're well. It's been many years. A strange thing happened today, and I don't know if it's my place, but I felt I had to reach out. I was doing some online research for a local history project, and I came across a familiar name. Daniel Bennett. I know your father passed away, but the context was so specific I couldn't shake it. I thought of you immediately. Again, my apologies if this is unwelcome. Sincerely, Marie Gable. Below her signature was a single, plain-looking link. My first thought was it's a mistake. A different Daniel Bennett. It's a common enough name. Or maybe an old article, a digital echo from before he died. My hand was shaking as I moved the cursor over the link. My breath hitched. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff I hadn't realized was there. With a click, I jumped. The link took me to a forum for a small, wealthy town in Northern California called Cedar Creek, a place I'd never even heard of. It was a page for local business owners. The specific post was from 6 months ago, a thread congratulating a local architect on winning a prestigious award. It read, "A huge congratulations to our own Daniel Bennett of Bennett and Sons Design on winning the Pacific Architecture Award for his work on the Cedar Creek Public Library. Dan, you've been a cornerstone of his community for over a decade, and we're all so proud of you. Well deserved." My blood ran cold. The words swam in front of my eyes. Daniel Bennett. Bennett and Sons Design. Over a decade. It wasn't possible. My father was dead. I had stood at his grave. I had touched the cold marble of his headstone. This had to be a sick joke. A digital ghost. Beneath the post was a photo. A group of people smiling, holding champagne glasses. In the center was a man. He was older. His hair was almost all gray, with deep lines around his eyes. He was heavier than I remembered, a little softer. But it was him. There was no doubt. The way he stood, tilted slightly to one side. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. The shape of his hands. It was my father. A wave of nausea hit me, so hard I had to grab my desk. My heart was a frantic bird beating against my ribs. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't real. I was having a breakdown. 19 years of grief were finally boiling over into a full-blown hallucination. But then I saw the woman next to him, her hand tucked possessively in his arm, smiling up at him with total adoration. And next to them stood 2 young men, maybe in their early 20s. Both had my father's eyes. Bennett and Sons. His sons. The sound that came out of my mouth was half gasp, half sob. It was the sound of a foundation cracking. For the next few hours, I fell down a rabbit hole. This wasn't a hallucination, it was an investigation. My grief, which had been a soft, sad fog for so long, started to sharpen into something else. Something cold and clear and dangerous. I found the website for Bennett and Sons Design. The About Us page had a bio of my father. It said he moved to Cedar Creek in 2006, 1 year after he supposedly died, for a quieter life after a personal tragedy. It mentioned his wife, Susan, and his 2 brilliant sons, Alex and Thomas. A personal tragedy. Was I the personal tragedy? Was our family the disaster he had to escape from? The lie was so massive, so breathtakingly bold. He hadn't just left. He had erased us. He faked his own death, complete with a grieving family, and just started over. But how? How could you fake a heart attack? A body? A funeral? A death certificate? And then, a darker thought snaked its way into my mind. The story my mother and Olivia always told. He was terrible with money. The debt. Selling our home. The narrative of the struggling artist who left his family with nothing. It had been their mantra, their justification for being so quietly bitter, for moving on so easily. Could they have known? The thought was so monstrous I almost threw it out. My mother, who seemed so broken. My sister, who held me while I shook with silent sobs. No, not possible. I pulled up my mother's social media. Pictures of her garden. A photo with Olivia and her kids captioned, "Family is everything." I scrolled back, years and years. Back to 2006, a year after he died. There was a picture of my mom and Olivia on a cruise to Alaska. They looked happy, relaxed. My mother was smiling a real smile, not the tight, sad one I was used to. I remembered at the time being glad they were finding some joy. They'd said a distant relative left them a small inheritance, enough for a trip. An inheritance. Or a payout. My hands were steady now. The panic was gone, replaced by an ice-cold calm. I opened a new tab. I searched property records in Cedar Creek. It was disturbingly easy. Daniel Bennett owned a sprawling 4-bedroom house with an ocean view. Purchased in 2007. The price made me gasp. It was more money than my father had supposedly seen in his entire life. Where did that kind of money come from? I thought about the sale of our house, the one he designed. My mom handled all of it. I was an 18-year-old wreck. I just signed where she pointed. I remembered her talking about the life insurance. A modest policy, she'd said. Just enough. But what if it wasn't modest? What if there were other policies? What if the financial failure story was the biggest lie of all? What if he wasn't a failed dreamer, but a meticulous planner? He planned his death. He planned his escape. And he didn't do it alone. The insurance money, the sale of our house, that wasn't to support his grieving family. It was his seed money. The price of his new life, his new wife, his new sons. And my mother and Olivia were his accomplices. They didn't just let me believe he was dead. They helped me bury an empty coffin. They watched me grieve a ghost for 19 years. They let me build my entire life on a lie they helped create. Every sympathetic look, every gentle nudge to move on, was just another layer of the lie. They weren't mourning with me. They were managing me. I wasn't a daughter or a sister. I was a problem. The one person who loved him enough to never let go, and because of that, the biggest threat to their secret. I leaned back in my chair. The office was dark and silent around me. The city lights twinkled outside, but they offered no comfort. The constellations my father taught me were just random balls of burning gas. There was no poetry, no magic. My grief for my father, my 19-year companion, evaporated in that instant. It didn't fade, it was incinerated. In its place, something new began to form. It wasn't hot like anger. It was cold. It was hard. It was steel. They had taken my father, my past, and my truth. They left me in a prison of grief while they enjoyed their freedom and their money. My sister with her perfect life, my mother with her peaceful retirement, and my father with his new, better family. They wanted me to live in the past. Fine. It was time to bring the past right to their doorstep. Not with shouting or tears. That's what they'd expect. They'd call me hysterical. They'd manage me, just like always. No. This would be different. Cold. Calculated. And public. I was going to take the foundation of their perfect lives, the foundation built on my pain, and I was going to turn it to dust. My father taught me that a strong structure needs a solid foundation. I was about to prove theirs was built on sand. The first step in any demolition is to survey the site. For the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life. By day, quiet office manager Claire. By night, an archaeologist, digging through the ruins of my own life. That glacial calm never left me. It was a shield, letting me look at the evidence without shattering. I hired a private investigator, a gruff ex-cop who specialized in financial fraud. I told him my father was the victim of a sophisticated identity theft scheme that started after his death, a half-truth, the easiest kind to sell. I gave him the name Daniel Bennett, the town of Cedar Creek, and a blank check. While he dug into the financial architecture of the lie, I focused on the personal. I reactivated old, abandoned social media accounts and started building a digital presence. I began posting old photos of my father and me. Happy memories. A picture of us on a fishing trip, him holding up a tiny trout with a proud grin. A photo of him helping me with a school project. Each post was a carefully chosen breadcrumb, a piece of the past I was reintroducing to the present. I captioned them with simple, heartfelt messages. Missing my hero today. Found this old gem. 19 years gone, but the memories feel like yesterday. I made my profile public. I wanted them to be seen. I wanted the algorithm to work its magic. Then I called my family. Olivia first. Her voice was bright and a little rushed. Claire. Hi. Is everything okay? Everything's great, I said, my voice smooth as silk. I was just calling to invite you, David, and the kids over for a family dinner. And Mom, of course. It's been too long. A slight pause. Oh, that's so nice of you, Claire. Special occasion. No, I said lightly. Just feeling sentimental lately. You know, with the 20th anniversary of Dad's, coming up next year. I just think we should be together more. I could almost hear the gears turning. This was not me. I was the recluse who dodged invitations, not the one making them. But refusing would look suspicious. Of course, she said, her warmth now sounding a little forced. That sounds lovely. Let me check our calendar. Next, I called my mother. Same reaction. Surprise, then a wary acceptance. A dinner? How wonderful, dear. You've been on my mind. Liar. We set a date for 2 weeks out. A Saturday evening. It was enough time. The PI called me a week later. His voice was grim. Miss Bennett, you're not going to believe this. Try me, I said, my heart a slow, steady drum. Your father's death certificate is a forgery. A good one, but a fake. There's no official record of his death in the state registry. The life insurance policy, it wasn't modest. It was a 7-figure payout, and it wasn't paid to your mother. It went into an offshore trust, which was then liquidated and transfers to a new corporation registered in California in 2006. The corporation's name? Bennett and Sons Design. There it was, the blueprint of their betrayal. He had cashed in his own life, paid off my mother and sister for their silence, and used the rest to start over. There's more, the PI said. The sale of your family home. It was sold to a shell corporation, which then resold it a month later for nearly double the price. The profits were funneled into that same offshore trust. Your mother and sister each received a direct payment from that trust in 2006. $100,000. The Alaska cruise. The down payment on Olivia's house. My mother's comfortable life. It was all blood money. My blood money. The fee for my 19 years of grief. I asked the PI to package everything. Every bank transfer, forged document, and property deed. Put it in a simple, easy-to-understand presentation. I told him. And email me a copy. The plan was coming together. It wasn't enough to just tell them. I had to show them. Make them see the lie in undeniable, black-and-white detail. The day of the dinner party, I spent the afternoon cooking my father's favorite meal, roast chicken with rosemary potatoes. I set the table with the good china, the set we only used for holidays when he was alive. I even bought a bottle of the cheap red wine he used to love. I was setting a stage, recreating a ghost of the family life they demolished. The final piece of my plan arrived by courier an hour before they did. A small, elegant gift box. I placed it on the mantelpiece, a silent centerpiece for the evening's main event. They arrived right on time, with flowers and a bottle of expensive champagne that clashed with my father's cheap red wine. Olivia's husband, David, was clueless, all hearty handshakes and small talk about the stock market. My niece and nephew were restless, immediately drawn to the TV. Olivia looked around my small townhouse. "It's so cozy, Claire," she said, her code for small. My mother hugged me, her cheeks soft and papery. "This is so lovely, dear. I'm so glad you're finally coming out of your shell." The first act was a performance of perfect normalcy. We ate. We talked about Olivia's kids, My mother's garden, my boring job. I played my part, the slightly awkward but well-meaning daughter. I let them think they were in control. But with every bite, every sip of wine, I felt the cold knot of my plan tightening in my gut. I watched them, catching the fleeting, imperceptible glances between my mother and sister whenever the conversation drifted too close to the past. They were so practiced. After dinner, while David was helping my nephew with a video game, I stood up. "I'm so glad you all came," I said, my voice perfectly steady. "It really means a lot. Like I said, I've been doing a lot of thinking about Dad lately." There it was again, that flicker between my mother and Olivia, a tightening around my mother's mouth. "I was cleaning the other day," I continued, walking to the living room, and found some old things. It got me thinking. "I wanted to give you something." I picked up the gift box from the mantelpiece. It was wrapped in plain brown paper and string. I handed it to my mother. "What's this, dear?" she asked, a polite, curious smile fixed on her face. "It's for all of us, really," I said. "A little family history project I've been working on." Her fingers fumbled with the string. Olivia watched, her face a mix of curiosity and dread. She knew me. This wasn't my style. My mother lifted the lid. Inside was a brand-new digital photo for fame. "Oh, Claire," she said, her voice softening. "How thoughtful." "I loaded it with some old pictures," I said. "I thought we could watch." "For him." I took the frame, plugged it in, and set it on the mantel. The screen flickered to life. The trap was set. The first few photos were innocent, the ones I'd been posting online. Me as a baby in Dad's arms. Him teaching me to ride a bike. Family vacations. Each image was a soft, nostalgic memory. My mother murmured her approval. "Oh, I remember that day," she'd say. "Look how young we were." Olivia smiled, a little sadly. They thought this was about healing. They thought this was me finally processing my grief in a healthy way. The slideshow continued. A photo of my high school graduation, my face sullen, a glaring gap where my father should have been. The mood in the room shifted. The air grew heavy. Then a new picture appeared. Not one of mine. It was the photo from the Cedar Creek Forum. My father, older, heavier, silver-haired, holding a champagne flute and smiling, his arm linked with his new wife, Susan. The silence was absolute, broken only by the sound of the video game in the corner. My mother's face went white. She stared at the screen, her mouth hanging open, her polite smile frozen and grotesque. Olivia made a small, choked sound. Her eyes darted from the screen to me, wide with panic. "What is this?" my mother whispered. "What kind of sick joke is this, Claire?" "It's no joke," I said, my voice flat. "That picture was taken 6 months ago. In Cedar Creek, California. Ever been? It's a lovely town, I hear." The slideshow advanced. The next image was a screenshot from the Bennett and Sons design website. A professional headshot of my father. Daniel Bennett, principal architect. "He looks well, don't you think?" I said, my tone conversational. "Successful. He even won an award. The Pacific Architecture Award. He's a cornerstone of his community." Olivia shot to her feet. "Claire, turn it off." "What are you doing?" "Doing? I'm just sharing my family history project, Olivia. The one you both helped me write." The next slide appeared, the forged death certificate. The PI had highlighted the fake letterhead and the forged signature. Beside it, a screenshot from the state registry. No official record of Daniel Bennett's death in 2005. My mother was trembling, her hand clamped over her mouth. Her eyes begged me to stop, but there was no mercy left in me. "You must have been so convincing," I said to her, my voice low and cutting. "To fool the doctors, the funeral home. Or maybe they didn't need much convincing. Maybe a man who wanted to disappear just needed a grieving wife and a practical daughter to sell the story." The next slide, a bank statement. A 7-figure transfer from the life insurance company to the offshore trust. "A modest policy, you said," I stated, looking right at my mother. "Barely enough to cover the mortgage. Was this it? This modest sum? The one that paid for a new life in California?" Olivia was openly crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. "Claire, please," she choked out. "You don't understand." "Oh, I think I'm finally starting to," I shot back. The next slide showed 2 more transfers. $100,000 each. To Eleanor Bennett and Olivia Bennett. June 2006. The Alaska cruise. I said, my voice like ice. Your down payment on that lovely house in the suburbs, Olivia. The price of your silence. The price of my life. Tell me, was I worth it? Was $100,000 a fair trade for 19 years of your sister's sanity? David was on his feet, his face a mask of confusion. What is going on? Olivia, what is she talking about? Olivia just shook her head, sobbing, unable to speak. The final slide was a collage. On one side, photos of me over the years, visiting my father's empty grave, sitting alone in his workshop, my face shadowed with grief. On the other side, photos I'd pulled from Susan Bennett's public social media, my father with his new family. Christmas mornings, beach vacations, the graduations of his two new sons, Alex and Thomas. A life of joy running parallel to my life of mourning. He didn't just die, I said, my voice finally cracking, not with sadness, but with a terrible, consuming rage. He was reborn. And you too, you were the midwives. You watched me wither away in the shadow of a lie you both profited from. Every hug, every word of comfort was a lie. You didn't lose a husband or a father. You sold him. My mother finally broke. A low, guttural wail tore from her throat. We had no choice, she cried, her face crumpled and red. He was going to leave anyway. There was debt, Claire, real debt. He was in trouble. This was the only way to protect us, to give us a future. You a future, I corrected her, my voice dropping to a whisper. You didn't protect me. You sacrificed me. You left me chained to a gravestone while you all walked away into the sun. You buried me with him. The room was a wasteland. Olivia, sobbing in her husband's arms. My mother, collapsed in on herself. My niece and nephew, standing in the doorway, their faces pale with a confusion that would soon curdle into horror. I had done it. I had detonated the bomb. I unplugged the digital frame. The screen went black. The show was over. I want you to leave, I said quietly. All of you. Get out. No one moved. Then, slowly, like zombies, they started gathering their things. My mother wouldn't look at me. Olivia, her face swollen, tried to say my name, but I just held up a hand. Don't, I said. There's nothing left to say. They filed out the door. A broken, shuffling parade. I closed it behind them and leaned my forehead against the cool wood. I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief. I just felt empty. The cold purpose that had driven me for weeks was gone. The structure was demolished, and I was standing alone in the rubble. The days that followed were silent. The angry calls and tearful texts I braced for never came. Just a profound, deafening silence. The silence of a family that no longer exists. Olivia's husband, David, sent one curt email demanding to know if what I presented was true. I replied with the link to the PI's full report. I never heard from him again. A week later, a 4-page letter from my mother arrived, filled with excuses. She wrote about threats, about dangerous people my father owed money to, about her fear. She claimed it was all his idea, that she was just a scared woman trying to survive. She wrote that she always meant to tell me, one day, when I was stronger. The letter ended with a desperate question. Can you ever forgive me? I read it once, then I walked it out to my small patio barbecue and burned it. Forgiveness is for people who make mistakes. This was a 19-year conspiracy. I've never heard from my father. I don't know if they told him what I did, or if he's still blissfully unaware in his perfect, sun-drenched life. Part of me hopes he knows. I hope he knows the daughter he discarded, the personal tragedy he escaped, was the one who brought it all down. Did I go too far? Did I destroy my family for a victory no one else will ever celebrate? Some nights, in the quiet, I wonder. I see my nieces' and nephews' confused faces and feel a pang of something like regret. I took away their grandmother and their aunt. I shattered their world as surely as mine was shattered. But then I walk into my garage, into my father's old workshop. For 19 years, it was a tomb. Now, for the first time, I see it for what it is, a room full of tools. Wood, metal, and potential. Last week, I picked up a paintbrush for the first time since I was 18. My hand was unsteady, but the feel of the brush was right. I don't know what I'm painting yet. It's just a mess of chaotic color. But for the first time in a very long time, it feels honest. My grief is gone. The love I had for my father is gone, too. In their place is a quiet emptiness. A clean slate. My foundation was a lie, so I tore it down. Now I have the daunting, terrifying, and exhilarating task of building my own. From scratch. Alone. And for the first time, I'm not the daughter of a dead man. I am just Claire. And I think, finally, that's enough. If this story left you speechless, smash that like button. Tell me in the comments, was this justice, or did I go too far? The line between vengeance and justice is a thin one, and I walk it every day. And don't forget to subscribe. You won't want to miss what secrets we uncover next.